All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 of the show. We have Todd Forman, a.k.a. Dr. Todd. Todd is a saxophonist, songwriter, composer, producer, engineer, and doctor. He's been a practicing physician since 2005. But before that, while he was going to med school, he was playing with the band Sublime in the early 90s, recording on all their records. Todd would join the Long Beach Dub All-Stars and then would take a break for a while until 2006 when he came back to Long Beach and he played with Third Alley and then joined Sublime with Rome for a world tour. During the process of the world tour, he would team up with Bud Gaw and Bert Susanka of the Ziggins to start the Jelly of the Month Club, which is probably the coolest kids band that ever existed. Todd continues to manage Jelly of the Month Club and has currently started a production company called the Moxy Brothers with Adrian Young of No Doubt. So, Todd comes to this conversation with a lot of wisdom to share. I left this conversation feeling very inspired, and I find myself thinking back to this conversation a lot. Todd's a super cool and caring, insightful individual, and I think that comes out of his words and the stories he shares. It was even cool. We even recorded some music. I play in a band called C Level, letter C dash level. We are a funk punk reggae rock group that takes acoustic, open-tuned guitars and runs them through Marshall amplifiers. At the very beginning of this conversation, I was telling him about how we tracked a song with HR called What's Left. It's on all the streaming whatevers, and that opened up the conversation when he was telling me about when he played with HR back in the day. Anywho, he recorded some horns for our record we got coming out. And this whole conversation is one of many for a project I've been working on with an interview I did with Bert Susanka. Now, when the Ziggins released their last record called Oregon, I reached out to Bert to do an interview, like just a over-the-phone spoken interview, and he agreed to it, and we set up a time, and right before that, his health just kept getting worse and worse, so we had to keep postponing the date. And it got to a point where he said, I can do it, but I can no longer speak. I have ALS. And not knowing what to do, I didn't even know how to respond. We came to the conclusion of doing a written interview, and I wrote up all these questions, and Bert would write me back answers every couple of weeks. And he really seemed to enjoy it because he would send me little messages in between being like, wow, he really listened and stuff. And sadly, that was Bert Susanka's last interview. And so not just wanting to put out like a bunch of text and be like, here's what he said, I've been illustrating that interview into a graphic novel. And I've been reaching out to anyone who's worked with Bert in any facet to highlight the impact he had as a musician and songwriter and to shine a light on how truly special of a person he was. So one last thing before we get to this conversation, if you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Dr. Todd and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Todd Forman.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. That's cool, man. Sounds like you're very creative and you're doing cool stuff. What kind of music do you play?
So my main instrument, I sing and play guitar, and the band I play in is kind of like a funk punk reggae rock inspired group. We take a lot of or at least I should say I take a lot of open tuned acoustic guitars and run them through Marshall amps. So it's kind of like it's kind of I'll send you some stuff we're working on. It's kind of bits of everything. But definitely along the lines of you can hear oh, these guys listened to Sublime once in their life and
yeah.
So
yeah.
And that's definitely how I came across the Ziggins, but I mean, it's a whole other can of worms with those guys, man. It's and the last thing we put out is we did a tune with HR, a reggae rock number.
Sweet.
And
all right.
Yeah.
That's super cool. That must have been fun,
dude. It was
interesting.
Oh, wild! That was a whole 5 years of trying to talk with H for an interview, and it ended up being this whole project thing. Unattended, yeah, it was cool. He's a guy that and I know it's been around the Sublime cats, and I'm sure. Have you worked with H at all? With any of working with those guys?
I've seen him. I've met him once or twice, and been on stage with him once with the Long Beach Dub All-Stars at their first gig. But other than that, I don't know him personally. But yeah, I've just heard his reputation and what he's been through. And,
oh yeah.
But the Sublime guys revered Bad Brains. I mean, that was when they got to play with HR and Bad Brains at a local club back in the 90s, they just thought that was it. Like that was the pinnacle for them, you know,
Yeah.
because they just loved Bad Brains so much and gleaned so much from Bad Brains' attitude and openness to different styles. And, you know, I think that's really one reason Sublime was so popular is because of their openness, you know, to just take multiple genres and appreciate all music. I mean, I have a jazz background, and I remember just having a little trio playing some jazz with Eric Wilson, and Brad was just all about, I want to come hear you guys. I want to come listen to this, you know, and just be able to incorporate anything. He was almost like a minor bird of not only creativity, but of taking bits and pieces from all sorts of genres. And I think that really served Sublime sound well, you know?
Yeah.
And I wish more bands would do it and not be so genre specific, you know? There's so many bands where you hear one great song and then everything else is kind of
The same.
okay. You guys are just doing the same shit, and there's so much else out there, right?
I totally agree with that. And like, I don't know. I also think like it's so funny because like certain bands that like are you can tell what their influences are. And when you ask them about it, they'll say, "Oh no, it's something else." You know what I mean? It's like they're afraid to wear the T-shirt of their favorite band, you know? Because
Yeah.
but it's like, man,
Yeah.
like, and I agree with what you're saying with like Sublime. Even just listening to it lyrically, and just like there's bits of everything, and it seems like those guys just had no fear of being. We love this shit, and this is what we're doing. We're putting it in our shit. We love it so much, like,
Yeah.
and like the kind of build up. So your background starts with jazz. So can you kind of walk me through how you get started in music?
So yeah, my background in jazz, I grew up in Long Beach, California, like the Sublime guys did. And what's really unique about Long Beach, at least in the 70s and when I grew up, is they had really strong music programs throughout the entire district of Long Beach. Had some really great players come out of Long Beach. It's always been kind of a musical town. And, you know, it's the kind of thing where you went off to the symphony every year to listen to the Long Beach Symphony. And my elementary school band leader was in the Long Beach Symphony. And we had the local music shop come in when we were all in third grade and showed us all the different instruments because, of course, they want to sell them or rent them. And every school had, you know, 6 stand-up basses and a lot of instruments to loan out to kids. And so from elementary school to middle school to high school, you had these vibrant programs. I think my high school in Long Beach Wilson, one time had over 300 kids in the marching band, for example.
Damn.
So that's almost unheard of now,
Yeah.
except maybe in Texas where it's still kind of big. And that kind of musical vibrance, of course, with kids, it makes an impact, you know? So by the time I got to high school, my first year in high school in 10th grade, there were garage bands. There were bands that popped up all over the place. And you had this vibrant underground music scene. And punk rock was just coming on, and there were local clubs that allowed teenagers in, and it just created this really cool environment for a kid who was musically inclined to both get some decent training. My teacher was at the local music shop, and he was an old swing guy from the 1940s, and so he taught me how to classically get trained with the horns, saxophone, and clarinet. And then I took from this other jazz cat, so I was taking two horn lessons every week from middle school all the way through high school. And that combined with jazz band in middle school and high school, and starting with garage bands when I hit high school. It was once I saw one of the bands I wanted to play in, I was just like, I need to do this. And sure as shit, you know, that band, the bass player introduced me to Eric Wilson when Sublime was looking for a keyboardist. And I came in with my horn one day, and they're like, "Oh, we want your horn too." So I played keyboards and horns primarily for Sublime, starting when my first year in college. But all the guys have similar stories about, you know, utilizing the Long Beach Unified School District and getting exposed to music and teachers. Eric Wilson's dad was was a jazz cat, drummer, and he lived across the street from Bud, and Bud started taking drum lessons from Eric's dad. But it's all because of Long Beach, because of all these old cats that used to play in swing bands in the 30s and 40s and 50s in Long Beach, and they're still hanging out and kind of still have their imprint on Long Beach. So that's how things get started like that, and scenes get started, is because it's wrapped into culture and the educational system. So I'm a huge fan of music education. I've been doing it. That's why I started Jelly of the Month Club with Bert and a couple other guys, and just want to make an impact for the kids, because it's been just like most things in public education in the United States. One of the first things to go is music education, and it's just been decimated, even in Long Beach, from what it once was. And so bringing kids back, exposing them to music at a young age, making sure that they realize they're all musicians. It's just a matter of choice on what instrument, and having them retain that kind of attitude that all kindergartners have. If you ask kids in kindergarten to raise their hand, who's an artist, and they all raise their hands. And then by the second grade or third grade, you have less than half the class raising their hand. And why is that? That should never happen. And I think it's similar to math. Like at a very early age, kids say, I'm no good at math. Well, it's really that they didn't really have the kind of temperament to sit down and try to solve a problem, because and then they just all of a sudden say they can't. And it's the same thing with music. If they get exposed to an instrument early, but they honked a saxophone, it sounded like shit. They'd be like, oh, I'm not a musician, instead of saying, oh, maybe I could work at this and figure this out. And so just encouraging that kind of attitude, I think, is the most important thing to do with kids, and trying to retain some sense of artistry as they go through the education system that tends to drum it out for some strange reason,
Yeah, no, I could not agree more with everything you just said, because it's crazy. We live in a society in a way that's like, you're encouraged to learn and this is a Victor Wooten train of thought, and I see it every day.
I love Victor Wooten.
Oh, okay. Then
heroes.
Yeah. Oh my God. He's so not only just such a good musician, but like so wise too. But like the whole idea of like being able to talk, and how we encourage babies to babble, and then we encourage them when they say the words wrong, because they're expressing. And then with music, when any musician plays it wrong, at that early age, you're like, hey kid, you gotta do it right. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it's happened to everybody. It's happened to all of us. We're just encouragement at an early age. I remember I had my son come up and play a guitar solo for a 4th of July block party that we had.
Yeah.
And one of the neighbors, who's an engineer, came up to him and said, "Oh, you need to stick to your day job."
Yeah. Yeah.
And first of all, my son ripped the solo. He sounded great. It was good. It wasn't objectively bad. And he was just imposing his bias, because my son's a biology major, and he kind of wants him to go involved. And so yet even my neighbor had his own agenda and was trying to squash my son's talent. This is and let alone if you have a parent who's worried about the music business, or worried about their kid becoming an artist, starving artist. There's so many negative agendas that are out there that art has to fight to pierce the veil, so to speak. It's pretty unbelievable.
It is. Yeah, it's crazy, because, and also then it's like, oh, you're really good at the thing. Say you're just an incredible musician or incredible painter. Then it becomes the kind of number based thing, and especially now with like social media. But even back in the day, it's just like how many prints did you move? How many? You know what I mean? Like it all becomes. Then that's the marker of success, and it's like. I had this conversation the other day. So here in Cleveland, I also work at a nonprofit art gallery called Negative Space. And basically, I just put on shows there.
Right on.
And like it's so cool, and like it's one of the only ways I can like give back for nothing. I haven't made a dime in the last 10 years, and I don't plan to, because it's an amazing place and amazing people to be by. But anyway, we were talking with some of our friends, and like just kind of like looking into the new year. And this one artist, she said this thing that really made me think about drawing in a different way. She's like, the whole process is just solving problems. And I'm like, wow, because it is like, and I went just back down, like trying to like, how can I make Bert's face look right from this angle? You know what I mean? Like, you're solving micro problems, and like, that's a skill set that can help you with anything. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, of course. Yeah.
the fact that like, some of these like, when it comes to education, like, and then I've seen it firsthand because my job, the only reason I have instruments is because I bought them for my class.
Right.
But like,
yeah.
But you see it firsthand, all these little things that you're solving, these little problems, and like, that's going to help you figure out the bigger problem, and like, it's and it's fun, and it's already like enticing to like jump into it. And like, yeah, I totally agree with everything you're saying. And like, I think it really just takes people who are doing it to show other, the youth, and like, anyone else, even people who are older, that they can do it too. All they got to do is like put down that guard of like, I'm not good at this because I've never done it before.
Yeah. And a couple things. The measurement of success is really important. I mean, you look at Victor Wooten, and he's this unassuming guy. I assume he doesn't make millions of dollars, but of course he can, provide for his family. And you got to like, that guy's super successful. He's never maybe had a hit song, but he's probably played on dozens of them. But it's like, why are we measuring success in these really obtuse ways that have nothing to do with art, or with success in general? There's so many definitions of success out there. You're successful. I'm successful in music, well, how many streams do you have? Well, how many hit songs have you played on? Well, what bands were you associated with? It's just like, people have to almost categorize art in a way that really degrades the whole process, and I think discourages people from starting in the first place. And I always and just I always say, musicians are good listeners, and listening is such a key concept with music. That's one thing that when I started a program in the elementary schools, and that's what I would do. I'd say, we're practicing listening. Musicians are good listeners. This is one of the things that you can aspire to if you play music, because you have to listen more than play the instrument. You have to listen. And it's there's so many little lessons in music that it's integrative math, it's integrative biology. It's really an amazing skill that I think every kid should have to do. I think there should still be a piano in everybody's house. Like we had, in the 70s, there was probably still a large percentage of families had an actual piano in their house. And we've gotten away from all that. It's just such a bummer, like a lot of things in society.
Yeah. But but you're doing stuff about it, like with the Jelly of the Month Club.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to go back, like, and to throw in that too, focus is such a key skill that's learned from listening. And like, just your brain. So I studied music therapy at Cleveland State, which is how I ended up getting my gig I have now. But like, it totally entrances your brain in so many different ways, but in a way that's really keyed in with rhythm, which makes that whole like listening, like even something you're not consciously doing, but you're doing. And like, it's such an important, like impactful thing for whatever that kiddo wants to do later down the line. They may not realize it, but like that moment doing that thing, you're going to see it pay off later. And like, now to jump back to the Jelly of the Month Club, my nephew, when he was born, or when he was like 1, I was playing him that record, your guys' first record, and he loved the first song about the bullfrog, or about the frog.
Yeah.
And like, yes, that was his jam. He would get up and rock out to that. And just the other day, it was so awesome, because like somehow he wanted a harmonica, and I didn't know it, but his mom knew it and gave him this harmonica. And like, it was one from like Amazon. All the reeds are blown out. It didn't work, but I'm opening it for him, and like I'm holding it, and I play harmonica. So I'm like, oh, I can show him a thing. And he starts just huffing and puffing on it. And I'm like, oh, let me try it. And then the reeds are blown out. So I sound the same. You know what I mean? Like I can't play anything. So I'm huffing and puffing too. And like he's walking around and like his dad's like, oh, Uncle Dave will show you what to do. And he's like, I already know. I'm like, yeah, he's got it. Part of that, I think, so that being able to feel that, oh, I can do it, and doesn't matter what it is so like important. And like,
oh yeah.
And like, going back to like kind of like with your musical trajectory, like working with like the guys in Sublime and like just punk music and just like this ethos of we can do whatever and this is our thing, you know, is like so like quintessential to anyone who's inspired to try to be creative. So kind of jump back into your story with it. So when you start playing keys and like sax with those guys, is it like early Sublime stuff? Are they just jamming? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I mean, Brad was such a prolific songwriter that we were playing all the hits from 40 Ounces of Freedom from the beginning. I mean, he had a lot of those songs were from him learning and copying songs. And, you know, the first album, I think they paid over $1 million just in legal fees because it's more of a music history than original music, you know. And some of which I didn't realize until I got back into the band Sublime with Rome and started really digging into the songs because I was going to play them live on tour and everything, and realizing all the connections. I'm still making connections with these songs with the more you listen to old reggae and old tunes on what they were doing and what Brad was trying to synthesize. So we were playing, you know, date rape in backyard parties and bars and all, you know, a lot of what you hear on 40 Ounces of Freedom were all the songs that we were playing. I joined the guys, I think they formed in 87 and I started playing the summer of 88 with them. And I went to school back east at Harvard and I would come back every summer and play with the band. And so I kind of got 3 months with the band and then I go back to school, play with them over Christmas break, go back to school, play with them again the next summer. And so I got these snippets of the band's growth every summer. And it didn't take them long, man. Once Mike Halfholt got involved and got them organized and got 40 Ounces done, which is really a miracle to get that down on reel to reel, where, you know, it's not like today where you just hit a computer and you're all set. It really took a lot of ingenuity and work and know-how that he had to learn while he was at, I think, Cal State Northridge. Might have been Fullerton. I'm not sure which one. I think it was Fullerton, where they would sneak in and get some of the work done. We were in the back of, it was a makeshift studio that was in the back of an apartment building in Belmont Shore. And the timing was great for me. I came back for, I think it was between my sophomore and junior year, and they were ready for me to lay down the horns. And so I got on 5 or 6 songs on 40 Ounces. You know, right before they were done tracking, and I was really fortunate to get on that album. And they were always really welcoming. I could play with them anytime because they just loved my horn, and I'd play keyboards here and there for them. And you know, they went through many iterations and had their ups and downs in those early years, where Bud was, you know, in and out of the band. They had Marshall Goodman playing drums for him a bunch. Kelly Vargas came in for a while. And they were just known as the band that was always at any parties around Long Beach and Long Beach State. I mean, they really would play anywhere, anytime, any venue. I mean, we were playing backyard alleys. We were playing anyone who wanted us here. So we played in front of the bank in our Main Street, 2nd Street. We'd just play in front of the bank. Anything we'd play, you know. They played my 21st birthday party at my house. Yeah. And there's a picture there's a collage in the second album,
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And there's a collage, and there's a picture from my birthday party in that collage, which is rad. I made it black tie, so it was really a cool event. Everyone was wearing tuxedos, and they came in and played. There was like the walls were sweating. You know, it was so freaking cool. So there's just there's such an openness with the guys. I mean, once money got involved, Brad took me back aside after a gig once and like, we're a 3-piece, man. And I get it. I'm probably going to medical school. I've got my own thing going on. Just call me when you need horns. And he's like, cool. And we hugged it out. And that was my relationship with Sublime, And they called me to be on a track on their self-titled album, and I did a couple other things for them. Hong Kong Phooey, they did a remake of that song, and I did the horns for that. In the morning I was in med school class and at UCLA, and then in the afternoon I was at Sunset Sound in the studio with the members of Green Day looking on, laying down the sax parts for that song. It's like, man, this is a good life. This is cool.
That's incredible. Well, and that's, what a cool, we people, we want to be fulfilled in creative ways and intellectual ways. And I feel like when that happens, what a fulfilling, amazing moment or life that is, you know what I mean? In those moments when you're like, holy shit, this is sick. It's stressful. I got to turn this in and do this and nail this part. And they didn't record to a clip. Whatever. There's all these bits, but after the math, that's so incredible.
It's really, I'm very fortunate to be able to navigate both through my life. And there's been times I didn't play music for about a decade, between medical school, residency, and then I taught at USC as a professor for 5 years. I hardly ever picked up any instrument in that whole time. And then when I moved back to Long Beach and started having a family, I started getting involved with local bands. And I don't know if you talked to Greg Lowther. His nickname's Mud. He runs Long Beach Records. He was one of the best friends of Eric Wilson. He is one of the best friends for Eric Wilson, and he was one of the founding members of Falling Idols.
Oh, okay.
And he's a drummer. And he runs Long Beach Records, and he's a super cool guy and really smart. He's been working as a paralegal his whole life, but always been in a ton of punk bands. And he's in a band now called Pero Bravo with Mike Happold. Yeah, with Miguel. And so he might be a good guy for you to talk to too. And he knew Bert really well also. He's been in bands with Bert as well.
I would love to chat with him. But
anyway, he got me back involved in music when I moved back to Long Beach, and it just kept going and going. And it was such a vibrant scene still for me that I ended up getting back in Sublime with Rome and touring with them for the first year and a half. And that really kind of got me back into the music scene in a big way.
Well, of course. That's it's amazing that it all kind of comes back to the community. It all comes back to where it started, going back to the music ed programs. A couple questions. So when playing with Sublime in the early years, coming from a kind of a jazz background where you're going off charts and you're learning how to play over chords and stuff, with working with them, what kind of skill sets did you find yourself using to kind of communicate musically with the band? Does that make sense? What did okay. Yeah.
So people think musicians aren't generally smart. That's not the case with the Sublime guys. They're all really, really smart people. So, you go, well, how can you go to Harvard or be a doctor and hang with these guys? It's like, no, I was having trouble hanging with them, not the other way around. Especially with music. I mean, Brad was bilingual. He knew Spanish well enough to call him bilingual, and he learned it in school. I mean, he was just that smart. And early in college, and he only went to college for a year, these guys, I would say they had some theory. I wouldn't say that they could all read music that well. But we all were just more like jazz musicians and calling out chords or just feeling it out, in a rehearsal room or even on stage. I mean, I would come play with them, and they would be cool with me playing whatever. Like I wouldn't even be prepared. I would just listen to whatever they're playing by ear and throw in stuff, you know. And then there were other times like the solo for 5446 going into Ball and Chain. I play a sax solo on that song. Well, that was Brad's solo. He sang the solo. Da 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 ba da 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 ba da ba 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 da ba. That came from him. I just played it. You know.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's from ear, and with jazz chops, it made it easier for me and more facile to come into any situation and be able to just jam. There's a song on one of the Also Ran albums that came out after Brad's death that's called Forman Freestyle, which was just me showing up at a studio where it was like, hey, let's jam. And so we just jammed out, and they, ended up being on one of these side records. And it's just spontaneous, and that's what dub is, and that's what jazz is, and that's what a lot of reggae is, just kind of open it up. And everyone in the band, especially Brad, was just so open to new music. When I played in other bands after Sublime, it was kind of an adjustment to realize that other musicians, especially people that wrote the songs or lead singers, they weren't so accommodating. They're like, no, you play this and play it like this. And I'd be like, no, that's not as fun.
Yeah.
So it's I really appreciated how open these guys were. And it was almost like, it felt like a jazz trio or jazz quartet sometimes,
That makes a lot of sense, because like I remember, because like Sublime's been one of those bands, like when I first started really like playing music and learning and wanting the right music, I would listen to Sublime was a huge influence on me, like growing up, and I'd like learn, like how you were saying, like more and more of these songs are coming from other songs in other places, and that's a lyric to there, and like and then I also studied jazz as well, and like studying jazz, and you learn these motifs and riffs that comp from other songs that guys throw over everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rivers, and like how many songs are like, Honeysuckle Rose, that bit, like, and
yeah, I played Rhapsody in Blue on 40 Ounces of Freedom.
Yeah, there you go.
It's an intro to one of the songs on What Happened. The intro is Rhapsody in Blue.
Learning that kind of like how Sublime approached it, like this is jazz. This is freedom of like expression, and like it really kind of made me fall in love with that band again. You know what I mean? Like there's something already alluring about it, and then later contemplating and like seeing how like that artistry is woven, like. So that makes total sense that it would feel like a jazz trio.
Yeah, it's totally anti-formulaic is how I'd put it.
With when it came back to like, I guess even still staying kind of in the early years with these guys, like when it came to like after like going into those other sessions when you had to play what's on the chart or just playing in other groups, what are like some lessons that kind of like evolved from working with those guys?
Well, I learned most of what I learned from that was from Sublime with Rome, because now I was an adult and now it just wasn't for fun. I was actually like, okay, now I'm contemplating, forging more of a career in music, and how do I want to make a mark? So I was paying attention more, and I learned so much. And that's when I really focused more on my keyboard playing and how to fit in, and getting into old reggae and listening again, back to listening. There was such what I didn't appreciate when I was young, first playing with Sublime. It was almost just like, hey, what you got? And then you play it and you're like, that was cool. And then you go to the next thing and you're almost just living it. You're not really appreciating it or taking in the lessons, other than you just love doing it. It wasn't until later when I got back with Sublime with Rome and really dug into all the history of what Brad was saying and what he was representing and what he was utilizing with his craft, that I appreciated. One, that depth of knowledge that I just had bits and pieces and echoes of this and that. Whereas when you really look at it as an adult, you're going, well, wait a second, where did this go? And I started doing kind of retracing the steps of everything and really listening differently when I listened to Bad Brains or listening to their history of when they went from straight, punk rock into the reggae dub scene and what that looked like and why they did that. And, it's really, music is so deep and such an ocean that you can't really ever hit the bottom. And once I realized that I'm never going to leave music again. And I have such more of an appreciation for it and humility for the opportunity to play on such a deep level with people, that it's really, that gratitude is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned, to really just enjoy the moment. And it's okay. One thing I realized too is that I didn't really understand the dynamics growing up, but it's such a leap of faith to become an artist. You really have to jump off the cliff against your parents' expectations and their wants, perhaps, depending on who your parents are, on society's expectations, on what all your friends are doing, and they're leaving you all in the dust, going and forging a career, the ability to have kids or not have kids as a musician. Even if you're a successful musician, it's hard to keep a family together sometimes if you're on the road all the time. That leap of faith into an art, whether it's any kind of art, is so dramatic and it's such an amazing thing. And I realized when I was a kid in my late teens, early 20s, I wasn't wanting to do that, and just realizing how big a leap you have to make, and that I wasn't really ready to make that kind of leap, even though I could have jumped in the van with the guys in Sublime and really ingratiated myself and say, no, man, I'm a part of this. What do I need to do to get back? I was always a little too scared, Yeah. And for some people, it's like they don't have many other options. I had the option to go to med school, so that was kind of a hard pull.
Yeah.
That was hard for me to overcome, to think, okay, music full time. At that point, music full time was more like, okay, if I'm going to be a full time musician, I might be able to eke out a few bucks, but I'm going to end up being a teacher in music, and that can be a hard road. If you want a home in California, good luck. And so I decided to go the professional route at that time. But what I didn't realize is that I could come back to music and really in a bigger way in my 40s. That's really allowed me to kind of figure out that leap. And since I made the decision to get back into music when I was 35 years old, go on tour at 40 years old with 2 young children at home, risk my practice, everything else, spend a lot of time getting Jelly of the Month Club started, being the manager for that for 10 years and getting the best people I could to play with and get that, learning how to write songs, learning how to produce music, now producing with Adrian Young from No Doubt. And he's my production partner now, learning how to sacrifice, but also to keep a family unit together, keep my day job, keep my practice together. I understand what it takes now. And that is very fulfilling because it represents sacrifice. It represents a love for what you want in life. And it represents some form of validation that I can walk in a room with other musicians and say something. And that's just invaluable to me. It's great. I love art, and I love being able to participate in it.
Well, I think that's incredibly well said. And definitely that leap at first is such a huge, fear. And I think almost like having a little bit of not a little bit, but having a foundation from going to something like med school or going to any type of kind of career, kind of, if anything, gives you a higher thing to jump off of in a way. I definitely find it super, because I've kind of teetered both lines of going full in with this and full in with that, and they've kind of crossed paths. So I find myself thinking about that type of leap a lot. And so one thing too, I got to imagine, and with going through something like med school and doing for at least for me, for music therapy, they called it the practicums. I don't when you're on the field and you're basically doing the internship before the internship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so much discipline and dedication, and I think that pays off. Is fluent within the words of or at least the minds of a musician, and it sounds very much so how when you jumped in, fully committed and started writing and doing Jelly in the Month Club and learning how to navigate all those things. It makes sense that foundation would really be strong in those moments.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely was a pretty effective manager. Keeping everything organized. I got all the business aspects of the band down. I got, did everything that needed to be done to make it a viable business. That's why it's still a band today. So yeah, we've scored 2 movies in the last 5 years, and you soon realize that not every musician can score a movie, no matter how talented they are, because you have to be so organized. You have to be willing to say, okay, even though this is a killer song and I think it works, it's not what the director's vision is. You scrap it. So you have to deal a lot with your own ego on that level. And then when you're ready to deliver the songs, it is so much micro minutia of organization, not just each song, but each track in each song that you've put on this movie, and how you have to report it and deliver it. It's unending minutia details that you have to have a certain level of concentration and organizational skills to just be able to achieve it,
Yeah.
And so that's been good. And then of course, when I was on the road with Sublime with Rome, nobody has insurance. I was the team doctor for the whole operation, which I would rather not have had that role, but it was definitely something that I could give back to everybody, and was grateful for as well.
So after when you move back to Long Beach and you're getting involved in the scene again, what brings up Jelly in the Month Club? What makes you inspired to do that? Is it just the lack of music programming? Or is it having kids of your own and seeing how they react to music?
Yeah. So it was all that. It was, I had a 2-year-old and 5-year-old when I left for tour, and they were 3 and 6, 4 and 7 when I came home. And I had an inspiration when I was on the road, missing my kids incredibly. And I was on the tour bus. I would move around the different tour buses. Each of the main guys had a tour bus. And I was, for a few weeks, I was with Bud, and he had his daughter, Chloe, who was my daughter's age at the time, 2 years old, on the bus. And so one night we were watching Princess and the Frog, and all the music for it was so great. Dr. John did a fantastic job, and all the people that worked on that movie, the music was just blew me away, as most Disney movies do. And, I really got my start in music and jazz listening to Bugs Bunny cartoons, because they had such great music, to go with it. But I just, I turned to Bud and I said, wouldn't it be great when we get off the road if we could actually do a kids album that our kids would love to listen to? And he thought that was a great idea. And Bert Susanka had just rolled through the tour with us. He came up, and this is how cool Bert is. He came up on stage in front of 5,000-10,000 people by himself with his guitar, and would run through a few of his tunes. And he would call me up, and he's like, just come up and play. And again, here I am. I didn't practice any of it. I'm just noodling through his songs and playing the melodica, or playing my sax, or playing a little shaker. Eric would get on the bass, and he would kind of figure out the tunes in the middle of this show of, in front of 5,000 people, with Bert just loving every minute, and we were just killing it, just having fun. And so I got to know Bert really well. And before the whole Sublime thing happened, one of the first bands I got into was Bert's band, his solo project. And that's when I really got to know who Bert was. And we'd played together, and I'd known him back from the Sublime days, because the Ziggins and Sublime had played a lot together. But I'd known him superficially, and I really got to know him as a person. very well once I got back into music in 2005. But anyway, I thought Bert would be the first. He was the first guy I'd want in the band because not only his sensibilities as a songwriter, he's just so quirky. I thought his face, his mannerisms, his demeanor, his love, his spirituality would just translates to be the perfect frontman for a kids band. So Bud was stoked on that idea too. So when I left Sublime with Rome and I had built a home studio, when you get off the road like that in Long Beach, word gets around. So all the best musicians in Long Beach wanted to hang out with me all of a sudden, and then glean a little of the tinsel, off of the Sublime thing. So I got this guy Michael De La Torre, who I had admired his band, that he had opened, or one of my bands had opened for his band, Zen Robbie, and he was totally game. And unbeknownst to me, he was a great songwriter. And then we got this guy Chris Crum, who his last name's Kaplan and goes by Mr. Crum. He had just put out an album of his stuff, and he's probably the best singer-songwriter I've ever encountered. He's just a multi-instrumentalist. He was just like crazy brilliant. And then Bert, who's one of the best songwriters ever, in my opinion. So it was me and Bud and these three guys who are some of the best singer-songwriters anywhere, not just in Long Beach. That was our children's band. It's just like an embarrassment of riches. So we're like, let's get in the studio. Let's see what we can do. And that's our first album. It's just everybody putting in what they wanted to put in and come up with some tunes. And for that first album, I didn't write it. I think I wrote half of one of the songs just because it was a cool beat. On Lemonade Standoff, I came up with the music for it. But watching these guys interact, produce the music with them, starting to get my production chops going, thinking about songwriting and how they do it. And so I feel like I've learned from the best in terms of songwriting. But we really wanted to be the kids' first handshake to music. So we wanted to be, like Sublime, be genreless. We wanted to go into every genre. We wanted to articulate different genres to be able to introduce kids to those things, and also be funny as hell and be quirky and zany and cartoon-like in our presentations, but also be smart. And we wanted adults to enjoy the music as well, because there was you see the Barneys of the world, or the different the Baby Sharks and all the music that's just absolutely unbearable. And it's not, we were just reinventing the wheel. It was already out there. They Might Be Giants had a great kids album. Yo Gabba Gabba had really cool music stuff presented in a really cool, quirky way. The Aquabats. So, we weren't the first, but we wanted to be a part of that pantheon of really cool kids music that adults would love too. So at shows, I would always tear up when I saw the grandparents dancing to one of our songs,
Yeah.
While the kids are dancing in front, there'd be the grandparents dancing because it's a swing song,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we want to accomplish with that. So we did,
I definitely would say you guys did, because those tunes, like listening through to them, I'm like, man, these aren't like, usually you can kid changes. You're like, 1-4, here we go. You know what I mean? Like 5-0.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a lot going on here. So like when you get all these guys coming in together, would Bert come in like, here's a tune I have, you know what I mean? Or was it all just kind of together on the spot and like just the funniest, like kind of like idea or educational, like, or was it like a topic?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It was all the above. So the first song we had was Mike's song, Brand New Friend, which he already had. And he already had the whole thing. And it was like, this is the perfect song for Jelly and Mud Club. This is it. This is the song. And then everything else was, okay, let's think about other topics we want to write about. And everybody just went to town. And Bert would present these songs. And at first, you'd hear Bert's song and he'd mash it on his guitar and sing it. And you'd be like, yeah, I don't really feel it. It's such a quirky, weird song. You'd be like, what the hell is that? And then we would start producing it. And you're like, this is the best song I've ever heard, with such great lyrics and everything else. So everyone came at it a slightly different way. Mike is a producer himself, and he had learned production. So his songs sounded done, from the get-go. And he wrote a song called Waffles. And then Crumb came up with, him and Mike came up with the lyrics for Lemonade Standoff. And then Bert would come in and add his things. And so the songs were sometimes written via group with all of us, and other times it's like, I've got this great song, you guys want to do it, and that's how we put it together. And again, we didn't have any map for an album of theme throughout the album. We just wanted to present great songs with great messaging and good lyrics, and we wanted that punk rock ethos to be in there, wanted independence to be in there. We wanted to give we wanted some things to just be fun and quirky. We wanted certain themes. We wrote a Christmas song called The Shelf of Shelf, and that was more, Crumb kind of came to us with the music for it, and then Bert wrote a lot of the lyrics with everyone pitching in, and it's just been a great experience. Again, it was kind of one of those, I wanted the band to not edit itself. I wanted us to be able to go in every direction. But yeah, it was a great group that you never know how that thing's going to go. You're ready for failure at any time. And you just, that's the other thing about music and in any endeavor, you have to face failure. You have to be ready for it. I've bombed on stage. One time they went to me for the sax solo on one of the Sublime songs, and I completely biffed it. I don't know why. Everyone's been in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are kind of shy away from the stage, or shy away from playing live music, or even shy away from throwing out an idea because they don't want the bruise to their ego, And that's what it's all about, is to be completely fearless and to throw it out there. And that's all part of the process. And that's probably what I learned most from both Sublime and from Jelly of the Month Club in the process of keeping a band together, is you've got to be willing to pivot, and you've got to be willing to give up your ideas for the greater good. It's really, those are some of the hugest lessons in life that I've learned, to temper my own ego and be able to keep in relationship with people and the process.
Yeah. No, that's incredibly wise words. And you only learn that from being there and doing that and having the drive and will to stick through it, because I think a lot of people get that bruise and they pack up the skateboard. So the kind of jump in a little bit more with just Bert. So you met Bert when the Ziggins were playing earlier, and that was kind of just when the Ziggins were opening for Sublime a bunch, and that was just kind of not really knowing him. But on the Sublime with Rome tour, can you tell me a little bit about how you guys became friends, and a little bit about just meeting Bert and his personality?
Yeah. So again, I think I mentioned I met Bert with his first iteration
solo
of
band.
his solo project.
Astronaut Love.
The Astronaut Love Triangle,
yes.
And his solo album that came out before that, Onward Christian Slater. Yeah, it's a biblical expression, onward Christian soldier. You turned into onward Christian Slater. And that album I just thought was brilliant. I loved every song on that album. I just thought that the production that Rob Perez did. I don't know if you've talked to Rob, but he's a close friend.
Super cool guy.
He's a super cool guy and super talented, has such a great ear, and an ear like mine. I grew up with older brother and two older sisters that were 10 years older than me. And so all the music of the 70s, I really just dig all of it. I love the production value and all that. I love all the tones, and Rob Perez is right there. And he got a hold of Bert and created, I think, one of the greatest albums in that album. And Greg Lowther, who I'd mentioned earlier, who runs Long Beach Records, he was the drummer for that band. And Greg brought me into, and so I was a keyboardist and saxophonist for the Astronaut Love Triangle, Zanka's solo project. And that was when I really got to understand who he was as an artist and understand who he was as a person. You know, he was very faithful to his Catholic church. He was just a beautiful soul. He was just so positive. You know, he was about an hour and a half away from Long Beach in the Inland Empire, and he had to commute for work. He had to commute for his music, and the car, and always took it in stride and was just like, I'll be there, you know. And it would be like 1 a.m, and he's got a half to ride back home after our gig. Here I am, you know, just trying to struggle my family and my practice with playing music, and then looking at him and seeing sacrificing for his music. And we were just brothers after that. I just loved it. And so when I'm on tour and saw that he was going to come out, it was just like, this is going to be awesome. And it was great hanging with him for the weeks. We toured through the East Coast and through New Orleans, and then he went back home. And then when I got off the road, he was one of the first people I called. Hey, you want to start this kids band? And then we just continued our relationship with that, and learned so much from him. He was one of the one person in my life who was not only a friend but a fan. We were fans of each other and friends to each other, and so he was one of my steady, you know, giving him a call every week to see how things are going. He would ask me just as many questions. I could share all my new demos with him, and he'd give me feedback and be positive, and he would share with me his new songs. And you know, those relationships don't grow on trees, man.
Yeah. I mean, so because there's kind of a writing partner in his, well, definitely, especially with Jelly in the Month Club, but with also like having that person you can kind of like check yourself with, you know, that you know you respect their input and their foresight and their artistry. So kind of like observing, like you're doing your practice and observing his practice. What was like some lessons you've learned from how he approached songwriting and making music that maybe you find yourself using now in your own practice?
Yeah, the Eskimos eat the whole whale. You know, they utilize all of it. You know, everything from the sinew to the bones to the fat to the skin. In songwriting, you use your whole life. You use every little bit of it. And he would come in with these scribbles. You know, he would just scribble on scraps of paper and notebooks and pads and just lay down his ideas. And he would not edit himself. It would all be in there, you know. And he would have notions and ideas that most people would just be like, oh, that's a dumb idea. But he'd go, no, that's the idea. That's it. And he would hold on tenaciously to any idea he had, no matter where it was looked like it would be failing, and then it would bring it back. And it would ultimately come together in this beautiful piece of music. And he, you know, that, and then he taught me his influences, whether it was NRBQ or some of the old country singers he was really into. There's this one guy that he really loved. I forget his name, but he did the theme song to the old Disney movie, Robin Hood. Okay. What's this guy's name? Do 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 do.
I can't think. I know the tune and I know his music, but I can't think of him.
Yeah, songwriter like that, you can hear a lot in Bert, and NRBQ, you can hear a lot in Bert. Yeah. And so he had his own style that was informed by the people he loved and was into, and then you go, well, what am I into? What? How do I want to create my voice in my own way, but not inventing it from nothing, because it's ultimately going to sound like something else. So how can I use the pantheon of music history to inform me and to show me a path to write my own tunes? And that's a big thing too. Like, you shouldn't shun copying people or other people copying you. That's a compliment, because we all do it. We all take from it. And how can you build on it, in your own unique way? It's really part of the songwriting process, for sure. And then also, demos, we tell our artists all the time, show me what you got. Even just, hum me a few bars, sing it into your phone and show me that. A great song can sound like shit and it's still a great song.
Yeah.
And buffering it out is all in the production process. So understanding that process about it, that you can be too careful when you write songs, and you can edit yourself too much, especially early on in the process. And Bert was just a master at being able to come up with lyrics and ideas, and he could hear things that weren't there yet,
like melodies or like parts,
melodies,
transitions,
parts,
okay,
transitions, harmonies, and the way he wrote really lent itself to doing really quirky, cool transitions and harmonies and gaggles and gags. I mean, we had a fart song. We had a song called "Food Fight" that he wrote.
Yeah,
that was freaking hilarious, and the stuff we were able to pack in there was so great, just so awesome. And some of the live shows we did, we had at the end of every show, it's tradition that someone would crack an egg on Bert's head. And we'd have a pie eating contest where Bert would get his, just basically have his face mashed in whipped cream. And we would do so many hilarious things. I would buy these little food squishies and we'd have an actual food fight. I'd buy waffles and we'd be throwing the waffles around. We'd have so much fun with it. And Bert would come dressed up as Elvis sometimes, coming out for a show. And then, for the fart song, he'd put on a green Shako hat, because that was one of the things he did with the Zig At. So he did that with us. And, it would be Timmy Turtlehead, and he'd take on the character of Timmy Turtlehead, which is the turtle, and sing a song about needing to poop. And we just went with it. He had another song that we had called Ignore Your Parents, that I think we ended up not putting on our first album, but we really wanted to. It was just so subversive, and we did it in the kind of a barbershop quartet style. So just being able to be bold and irreverent and push the limits, but also coming from the heart always. I think that's what gets lost on punk rock a lot, is that punk rock, the messaging might sound harsh or rebellious, but it all comes out of love for one another. It's really a very humane discipline, is punk rock, because it's loving another person enough to tell them the truth about their experience, how hard it might be to go down and to swallow. This is the way life is, And that's the way Bert wrote too, just unapologetically, whether it was talking about God or his faith, which he wanted to put God into some of his songs. And one of our guys, Chris Crum, is a devout atheist. So we'd have these talks about religion and what was appropriate and this and that. But Bert had no fear.
I think that's it. That's that definitely all comes through musically. And that sounds like what a cool group of guys to get together to do something as like fun as just like make the freedom within the Jelly of the Month Club. That's like an incredible thing to take on, man. And so like while you were cooking up that, you stopped touring with Sublime with Rome, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this was like, okay, as you're doing that, like was it kind of just getting off tour and getting into your own lane of music as well? Or like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I had to learn what music was to me. I had to learn what relationship I wanted with music. And, I had to scratch that itch on my back of what if Brad had survived and didn't pass away, and what if they had gone on tour and I'd taken a leave off med school or whatever, and had all this what if, of what would that experience be like? And being able to scratch that itch and actually go on a world tour for a year and a half with Sublime with Rome and play all these historic venues, whether it's Red Rocks or play in Brazil to 80,000 people, or go to Europe twice, or play in New York at Jones Beach, and play all these amazing shows. What you realize as the sideman is you're a sideman, number one. You have no power in the situation in terms of say. It's just like, okay, you're going to go here and then you're going to go there. And then you're playing the same songs every night. Now they're the same. They're all hit songs, and they're all really fun to play. And there's a little bit of extemporaneous stuff that goes on during the set. But after doing it for 6 months, you're like, where's the growth here? I've got my chops. My chops are better than they've ever been, and I can play the notebook. I can play the phone book of music, on my horn. I'm feeling really great that way, musically. But where's the creativity come from? Where's my voice? And I felt wanting. It left me wanting more. I wanted something else. And so I learned that about myself. I learned how hard the road is. I mean, you'd be fine for a week or two, and then you just start missing your kids so much you can hardly breathe, And so after a year and a half, that was enough. It was hard because the road is such a great experience to travel the world as a touring musician. It's so great to, have people set up your shit every night, and here you are playing in front of 10,000 people, and you're just like, yeah, this is fucking cool. So it was hard ego-wise to say goodbye to that, and to, sit down with the guys and just say, I'm done. I can't. But I had to go through that process, and I had to understand what that was, and what was fair and not fair, what was possible, not possible, and what was best for my own family and for my practice. And now I had the task of balancing my life at home. And how did I want to do that? And so that's when I started going, okay, well, let's start this band, see where it goes. And it was the right call for me, for sure.
So, because I have a few of my band members also have kids, and like the balance between doing a job and being a family member and being a musician, it's a fine balance of all these different things. And like, for you, what have you found helps you keep that balance? Like, what's some skill sets or some practices you do to help like strengthen that muscle to balance all this stuff? Like,
well, don't drink too much and don't use drugs.
Ba-boom, there it is.
Yeah, if you can do that, especially because when I was younger, I smoked marijuana and drank more, and it's all fun and games in your 20s. When you get older and you have family, it's untenable thinking you could balance all that stuff and still party like that. Like, that's just you're deluding yourself if you think you can get away with that, or think that you can be available to other people when you're high or getting drunk every night. It's just not going to work. So that's the most important thing, I think, for a lot of musicians, is to fight those demons and to not associate great music with great drugs. And so I think that's half the battle. And then the other half is managing your expectations on what's realistic, because so much of the excitement around music is wanting to be heard and wanting that gig with 25 people at the gig to become a gig where 200 people are at the gig, to be the gig where 500 people are at the gig, to be able to go on tour, to, what is the goal? Is the goal that, or is the goal the music itself? or is the goal to try to subsist and make a living at it? And so there you go back to the process of artistry of being, what is the work? What is the problems to solve here? And all those little questions you have to answer for yourself, and answer in a way that's realistic for keeping a relationship with your spouse or your significant other, and keeping a relationship with your kids. Because it could easily go by the wayside to where you have very little connection with your children if you let it go there. And they really need you. And so focus on the kids, focus on your wife, then focus on your work, which is your music or anything else. And you have to put those priorities number one and number two and number three, and that's it. That's it. You can't go away from that. And if you do that, the fear is that, there's going to be no time for music. But that's not true. There is a balance that you can have if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to be open and honest with your spouse and open and honest with yourself. I think most spouses, if they are good people, they want the best for you. And you don't base your relationship on need. You base your relationship on want. And you have to be in touch with the choices that you want and the things that you really want in life. And you have to have your spouse that is equally centered, so that they're not going to get jealous, because music can be a jealous mistress of itself, So you have to balance that time so that you're giving time and you're present for the people in your life that love you and want to support you. And if you do that, they'll give you the time. They'll be happy to give you the time. At least my wife has been fantastic. I think you got to marry the right person. There's no question about that. And if the writing's on the wall, it's just not going to work. And then be able to adapt as well. I mean, I've left playing live music with Jelly of the Month Club about a year or two ago because my dad was getting sick. My mother-in-law just moved in next door. We're getting older. My kids were needing help. They're teenagers, so they're needing a lot of time. And it was time to take a step back, say, okay, how else can I exercise my musical artistry with these new and interesting responsibilities that come on in life? And so the beauty about music is there's a ton of shit you can do. I love production. I love making music. I love working with new artists. I love producing music. I love composing music. I love writing music. And I get just as much, if not more, satisfaction out of doing that than playing a big gig that we've been working for a long time. So, sometimes you have to make adjustments in your own musical life and in your own artistry to be able to stay in a healthy relationship with your family.
I mean, that's solid sound advice. So kind of dive into the production side of things. When did you start working with Adrian? And is that what helped you get into that whole lane of a musical career?
Yeah, it was kind of perfect timing for both of us. I'd been off the road since 2011 and started Jelly of the Month Club and had done that for about 6-7 years. And this other band I played with, this guy named Zach Walters, and we started we were in a band called Third Alley. And then that kind of ran its course. And then we decided to do an album together and call it Happy Tank. And so it was my first production where Zach and I produced the album, and we did it in my studio. And that's where I really started cutting my chops as a producer and co-writing songs and writing songs, and along with the Jelly stuff. And Adrian's best friend from childhood was my next door neighbor. And I had met Adrian, we played gigs with No Doubt back in the day, and I knew who he was and he knew who I was, but we weren't friends. But because of that connection and because of my neighbor next door, I just said, hey, Scott, would Adrian want to play drums on a couple of these tracks that we have out of our new album? And I had a little drum kit in my studio, and he's like, sure. and no problem. So he came in and he brought in a couple of his little drum stuff and just laid it down, and it wasn't the type of production he was used to, but he was totally game and willing to throw it down, and it sounded great. So we got that album out. We actually put the band together, and I asked Adrian if him and his son, who was a guitar player, wanted to play in our band, and they said yes. So we actually played a few live gigs with Happy Tank with Adrian on drums and his son playing guitar, and the bass player from Jelly Month Club, James Key, was the bass player, and we had this awesome guitar player, Alex Vo, who still teaches my kids guitar, as the band, and we did some cool gigs, but that didn't last too long, and it kind of fizzled out. And I said, well, I've got these production chops now, and Adrian had a basement that was just basically a practice room for him. And I'm like, hey, man, this is a cool space. If you ever want to get into production, I built my production studio, and you saw that, you can do that here. And it was perfect timing for him because he had just spent a decade being a professional golfer. And yeah. And so that's what he was doing since No Doubt kind of disbanded 2012, I think was their last tour. And so he was like, yeah, man, I'm interested in production. I think it'd be really cool. And I'm like, well, let's do it. And so our first gig was one of his golf buddies, who was a musician also from the East Coast, Joe Horowitz. He said he wanted to do 6 songs, and he's like, well, come out and we'll produce it. And so I got Adrian started with Pro Tools and with some Universal Audio stuff and, basic shit. And we produced that album, and I'm like, just see if we like it. And we had a blast. We just had so much fun doing it. We really enjoyed working together. As producers, as a production team, we were good because he was so well versed in drums, obviously, and in guitars and guitar tones. And I came with the sensibilities I have with my keyboard background, a horn background, and melodically, that we just worked really well as a team, helping people produce their music. And so we did that. And then there was a local band called Strawberry Army, of these 2 twins who were just really talented. And they had a band, and they were looking for production on an album that they had put together. And so we brought them in and started doing work with them. And here we go, And Adrian, I didn't know this was going to happen, but he went fucking crazy with this production. And he's got a world-class studio in that basement space now, with, just tons of outboard gear. He's got a SSL 24-channel board. He's got everything. He's got mics, amps, everything you would want. He's got his kit set up with 12 microphones around it. He's dialed it in and has learned about production. So he mixes the songs that we produce a lot of times, and he's doing a lot of mixing for other bands too. And, we just kind of built this. It started about 2017. And so now here we are, 8 years later, having produced dozens of acts and done 2 movie scores. And, he's about to go play the Sphere for, 18 shows, because that's coming back around for him. So we've just had a lot of fun together and really enjoy the creative process working together. And it's been magic.
That's incredible, man. And it's such a cool, it's really interesting because drums, well, the whole golfing journey with that, there's got to be some type of rhythmic thing involved. But I noticed drummers also kind of tend to do a lot of production work, and I think drummers are kind of producing the song as it's happening in a way. They're kind of guiding where everything's going, but they also kind of have what a perfect balance between the rhythmic aspect of that and the melodic aspect of what you're doing. So when it comes to something because they were horror films, right? And you both did them, right?
The first one was a horror film, and then the same director asked us to do his next movie, which was a thriller, called Misdirection. It's funny because I think Misdirection is going to come out before the horror film, but it's been a year and a half since we finished on Misdirection. It takes so long sometimes for these deals to get done, and the post production to get done and the distribution deals to get done.
So much, like there's so much with the film compared to like a record. It's insane.
Yeah, it's really insane. So, but yeah, for Misdirection, what was really cool is Adrian has an electronic drum kit upstairs as well. And so for a lot of it, you know, what our director kind of guided us towards is towards like more 9-inch nails, industrial heavy, like wanted a lot of rhythmic stuff. And so what we did was we would put the scene on and we would have Adrian play to the electronic kit. And he would just go through the scene and build the dynamics again, because that's what makes, I think, drummers maybe good producers is they're the first person other than the person who wrote the damn song to understand the song structure, detail, right? Yeah. As a horn player, I never paid attention to song structure. I'm just like, oh, here? Okay, I would rely on a nod from the lead singer on when to play. You know, I was clueless early on, you know. So you know, him with that, and then with the dynamics of a scene, he knew and had this instinctive way to be able to build the tension in a scene. And what was funny we would take those tracks and they were all in MIDI, and we would put them through all different types of plugins, like not drum sounds, but any kind of sounds, and see what happens. And then I would build tracks around those parts, and that became the soundtrack. I would say 80% of the movie's music was built that way, and I think it made it really unique and cool that you may not hear from a lot of different types of composers.
That's sick. That's so. But
yeah,
that goes back to what you're saying. Like the creative outlet of music can be in so many different places, and it's like, I think that goes back to like the idea of taking the leap too, leaping from a touring act to like making your own band, to doing production, to like you know what I mean, like to scoring film. Those are all like leaps in a way, and that I think that comes from the comfort of knowing, like going back to being able to like freestyle something and have it land or not land and just keep going.
Yeah. And I, you know, luckily for me, I just genetically was built with no fear with music, you know, like who am I to walk in a room with my horn player and with my horn and start jamming with Sublime, you know, like what makes that easy, you know? But I think that's one of my big attributes is being able to have that lack of fear to just try something new and be willing to fail, you know? It's definitely served me well.
Do you like and this is kind of like, I guess, a side question of that kind of like fear of that is like, I was talking with Brad Ziggin, and like, you know, he was telling me he had a student that he was working with who was like a heart surgeon or something, and like he's like, oh, like, you know, and the guy was all like kind of nervous about playing, and Brad was just like, or Bradley was just like, you know, he's nervous about playing, but what he does for his job. Do you find like, because of that kind of having a medical like balance in that sense, was there more pressure to do something in the other field, I guess?
More pressure?
Yeah, because like don't want to fail in any of that. Like is what I'm trying to say. Like,
yeah, well, it's definitely a push and pull with my medical career, and luckily, you know, I own my own practice, and now it's a concierge practice. So I run it exactly how I want to practice medicine, and I committed to that. And my mom was my partner; she was family doctor, and she had gone back to medical school when she was in her 50s.
Wow, that's so cool.
So she was the oldest person to graduate from medical school, second oldest in the United States ever to graduate from medical school. Yeah, at 51. So I taught with her at USC, and then we started a medical practice in 2005. And she was the one that kept the practice going when I was on tour for a year and a half. And I worked 4 days a week, and I made responsible for my own schedule. So I was able to kind of massage my music schedule with my day job, and that can't be with any, not any doctor can do that. Only one who owns his own practice and a family physician. I'm always on call for my patients, you know, so oftentimes I have to excuse myself from a session and go make a phone call. So, but I've been able to balance that, and I'm so appreciative of my day job. It's like such a great day job to help provide for my family and keep me centered as a human being. And it allows me to, every Tuesday night I'm at Adrian's house playing music because I have Wednesdays off, and then on Wednesday days I play music, and then on the weekends I play music, and then if there's something going on where we've got a band visiting in town, they're going to be in town for a week, I can take that week off, and be able to accommodate it, and not everybody's job can do that. You can get killed by your day jobs where there's just no extra time for the music.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, that's such a cool and special like journey to be able to do that with your mom. That's and like
Yeah.
And just even like for your mom to be like, I don't care. I'm gonna go out and get this degree. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people at that
Yeah.
age, they write it off, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. If I'm too old, I can't do this. And like
Right.
yes, you can. And like that's so sick, man. That's so cool and
Yeah.
special.
It's a great lesson to have and to watch your mom go through that transformation and just understand what it takes, because it's in your 50s. It's not like you snap your fingers and it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea and the inspiration comes quickly, but then let's see how inspired you are comes after. And it was a long road for her to make it and to do it and to be successful and to have a career. Took everything out of her. And so I think, it's a combination of having that inspiration and to be willing to do the work to get to that point. And I think everyone has to negotiate that in their life. But the thing is, I can't, shouldn't come from not trying,
Yeah. 100%. Man,
Yeah.
Todd, I really appreciate your time. Like this has been, I'm
Sure, man.
leaving, or I'm just super amped up and inspired. Like what an incredible like journey you've had so far, and there's so much more to go.
Yeah,
But
man.
before wrapping up, I wanted to like ask you a little bit about John Pounty, who just passed, and like being around. I don't know if you had the same interaction with John as you did with Bert. But if you can share any stories or insights from John.
Yeah, Pountney, John was a really, really gentle soul. So he wasn't the most verbal guy, He was almost like the really cool painting on the wall. And he played bass like that too. He just always fit in, played the basic stuff, got it done, but didn't really impose his ego on any situation. And what he was really successful at was live music mixing. He was the onstage mixing guy, sound guy at the House of Blues. And it was great because I did a lot of gigs at House of Blues, both with Jelly and then a band called Badfish that would come through town all the time. That was a Sublime cover band. That's how I kind of got clued in that Sublime was going to make a comeback, because Badfish was so damn successful.
Yeah.
And they came through in one of my bands with Zach Walters, Third Alley. We opened for Badfish at the House of Blues, and this was about 2008, and it was packed. And people are going fucking crazy. And the guys in the band knew my story, and they went nuts. And I'm like, dude, you got to play with us. And I actually did a couple mini tours and joined them on tour.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
Did you play with them at Nelson's Ledges ever?
No,
Okay.
I did, because they always wanted me to come out, and it looked like a great time. It just never worked out for me. But yeah, no, that must have been legendary. Did you ever go out there with them?
Well, my band, we play at Nelson's every once in a while, and like we played.
Cool.
There was one Badfish we played, and there's a stage, it's outdoor, venue, and like everyone camps there, and then after the main act, which of course for Badfish would be Badfish. In the woods, they had a side stage called Camp Weirdo, and that's where we would play. And so we were playing. I remember some of the Badfish guys came out. The drummer came out and rocked out with us, and it was really cool.
Scott.
Yeah, and like I was just that would have been crazy small world moment. But anyway,
I know, it was awesome. But yeah, I went to New York with them. I played I played a festival that actually No Doubt was headlining at the Jet Stadium. All of the gear got stolen after that gig, and we had another gig in New York City the next night, and they had band insurance. This is how rad these guys were. They were touring around on a tour bus, playing Sublime songs, grossing $1 million a year, and they had band insurance. And I lost my Barry sax in the theft. Their insurance bought me a brand new Barry sax. It was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And their lead singer also was a horn player, and he let me borrow his Barry sax for a few months until I got the new one in. And just such great guys. Just love those guys. They're just, they helped me get back in Sublime too, just because, I kind of got my tour chops. I kind of started understanding what it was like to play live with the songs, and it helped me, get back in Sublime.
That's incredible. Like, they've been at it for so long, man, and like those guys tour relentlessly. And like almost like when Sublime with Rome started happening, I'm like, I thought to myself, I wonder if will Badfish still be able to do it? And the answer is yes. Like, they're still killing it.
I know. I was wondering that too. And but the demand for those songs is high. I think they created their own little genre basically, and that it's there's a huge following for reggae rock, and Sublime's kind of the granddaddy of them all. In that respect, but there's definitely enough demand to go around. People love the songs, and they do such a great job with the songs. I mean, I think a lot of the entertainment value of how they play Sublime songs is higher than actually Sublime playing them. In some respects, they're such great musicians. The guy we had a guy in Jelly for a bit who ended up, and we opened for Badfish one time at the House of Blues with kind of all our musicians in Jelly, but with just doing some cover songs and stuff. And they ended up taking our keyboardist, and he's still touring with them now. And he's such a good musician. Just Cole Riddle's his name.
Okay.
And he's still touring with Badfish.
That's awesome. Yeah, our buddies Quasi Kings from Columbus, Ohio, have been doing a lot of dates with those guys too. And like,
oh, cool.
It's just so cool, man. I love that. Like, I love that it's still going. And like, because I remember they would do a Scotty Don't, and they would open for themselves. You know what I mean? Which was a genius move.
Yeah.
It's a genius move.
I know.
Like, that's
I know. I would play with them. I would play some of the Scotty Don't songs with them.
That's so cool.
And I did it in Chicago with them, and then we'd go out as Badfish, and it was like, we'll be back, and we're the same band. And we'd go nuts. It was cool that they did that.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I'm like, oh, that's genius, because then, like, it gives everyone the chance to hear what you got and also what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I play so many bar gigs where you try to slip it in between, and they just zone out for one and come back in for the one they know. You know what I mean? It's like
totally.
It's like
totally
like the most efficient way to do that. And like, I always admire the Badfish crew for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. But anyway, I think we were tying it to John. You're playing.
House of
Blues a lot.
So I would always see John at the House of Blues gigs, and he was just a great mixer. He just had a great ear, and always professional, accommodating, and just such a nice guy. One of the nicest guys I know. And you're surprised that he ended up. I think this is common knowledge. He had a problem with alcohol, and he got liver disease. And he was able to quit it, but the liver disease kept going. And he ended up needing a liver transplant. And we were all pulling for him. And he seemed to be doing well. Last time I saw him was just a few months ago. And he said he was feeling fine and well. And all of a sudden he's gone. It's just a terrible tragedy. But he's such a warm person. Really lovely, very unassuming. You wouldn't think he was in one of the top, bands that come out of Southern California in the 90s, and just a lovely, lovely man.
Well, that's, man, I appreciate the insight on that. And like, I was super bummed. I just like talked to Bradley like a couple weeks ago. And he's like, oh, I'll work on, getting John, because he'll have some good stories to tell you about Bert. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then like, And it just sucks, man. And right when it happened, I feel for his family and for everyone around him. It's such a shitty time it's always a shitty time for anyone in the past, but especially around the holidays. And it's just, I don't know. It's awful.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing for the band and everybody else, but it so is life, man. I don't know how old you are. You sound pretty young, but are you in your,
I am 35, so
35, yeah. So yeah, you're
good.
yeah,
The
you're
doctor
young.
thinks I sound young. I do a lot of gigs. I sit around 4-hour gigs. So if I sound young, that means I'm doing something right. Like
you might feel old, but yeah, just remember, I when I was your age, I just had my first kid, and I was still 5 years away from touring with Sublime with Rome. So you're really young in terms of your career and in terms of what you're going to do.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. There's a lot of times I'm like, fuck, I haven't hit the van. I haven't got to do any of I'm working on trying to make that stuff happen, but I feel like I'm screaming in the void. So that really, I need to hear that. So thank you, man.
Yeah, you bet. And if you want to do it, fucking do it.
Hell yeah.
See what it's like. See what the world is like. See what, and going out in that van and touring is harrowing and is a great adventure, and is extremely tiring. And you'll probably come back and go, okay, I'm done with that. but it sounds like you've done a little bit of it, but it also is a way
nothing
to see,
crazy, but
But I love doing stuff. Of course I love going on vacations or whatever with family and this and that, but I love seeing the world while I'm doing something. And what better way to do something but to go and play music and see the world. I think that's really great. I'd love to tour like that again. Jelly of the Month Club may be doing some touring. They might actually be near Cleveland this summer.
Yeah.
We're trying to work out some gigs. I don't think I'll be playing with them, but the guys are still going strong, still have their Jelly of the Month Club with the Peanuts Gang at Knott's Berry Farm, and that they do every year, and still going strong. So you never know.
Yeah. Well, so I work at a couple venues in Cleveland. My girlfriend works at the Cleveland Public Library. So if that's
cool.
Yeah, if that's anything.
Those are the type of gigs. Yeah, there's some big festivals where they can get a fairly decent payday, but there need to be the interstitial gigs that support the cost of flying out and hotels and everything. And so that's what our booking agent is trying to do now, is try to figure out gigs like the library gigs that would help, bolster that tour and make it happen.
Yeah.
So
let me know. Keep, with any projects, you have going, and if you're coming through this way and, or have anyone else that you guys are working with, or I don't know if with Moxy, do you guys do any of the business side like this, like help groups tour and stuff, or is that mostly that all production?
Yeah, we've had talks about, hey, do we want to turn this into a record company or start doing management or that? And we're both not quite interested in that aspect, because that's really one. I already have a day job. If I did, maybe I'd want to do that, but it's so much work to put all that stuff together. I mean, just for Jelly of the Month Club, doing it for a decade, it's like I appreciate all the work it takes to keep a band together, or any artist together and get that going. So mostly, we're willing to travel anywhere and produce anywhere that a band wants us to produce, or have them come to us. But we're not. We haven't been helping people get around the country yet.
Boom. Awesome. Well, man, thank you so much. This has been super insightful, and I've been trying to just talk to anyone who worked with Bert in any facet to add some insight and a page or two on their perspective. And I really appreciate you taking time and chat with me, Todd. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I know Bert would say, God bless you, man, for what you're doing. And Bert was really, really special. And it makes sense that someone from across the country would be inspired by him and by his body of work, and by him as a human being. And I think that just speaks volumes for who Bert was and what he meant to people. And I can tell you're a great guy. And I just want you to know that you've got you've got the support. I talked to Miguel about you, and you know, he wouldn't have referred me to you if he didn't enjoy this conversation with you. And so you got some fans out here on the West Coast. You're gonna have to make your ass come out here sometime.
I would
to
love,
hang out
dude.
with
It'd be
us,
so fucking
play
sick.
some gigs.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah.
if you need anything, let me know.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.